Hello all, I hope you are well in these extraordinary times. I'd like to welcome you to the Fintech Finance Virtual Arena where we're hosting you today. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a profile on a bank I've become weirdly obsessed with over the last few weeks. We're going to be doing a bit of a profile on Kuda Bank. I was very fortunate enough a few weeks ago to speak to Nora, who introduced the bank to me. And I've been kind of obsessing ever since. I even think I put a tweet out basically baiting Kuda Bank to reach a certain level of customers by the end of the year. So I'm very quite excited. Joining me today is the CEO and founder of Kuda Bank, Babs. Babs, I'm not going to try and pronounce your surname. No, Ogundeyi?
I try again one more time.
Ogundeyi?
Yes, that's it. Perfect.
Ogundeyi. We got Babs Ogundeyi. Yes. Joining us today. Are you in London or Nigeria?
I'm currently in Lagos in Nigeria. So yeah, but you wouldn't know any different because we've been indoors the whole time. So it doesn't really matter where you are almost.
I've been telling everyone I'm currently in the Seychelles Islands, but no one's believing me yet. Well, before we're going to go into kind of the ins and outs of Kuda Bank, let's kind of go just sort of pre-Kuda Bank. I want to start with the why. What was the kind of lightning strike moment where you thought, do you know what? I've got a spark of an idea here.
Yeah. So I mean, just to give a little bit of context. I've always worked within financial services. So I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for many, many years. And, all my clients were banks. Across Africa. So I basically had a lot of insights into how the banking operations work. And then I was headhunted to work for the government, and again within finance, and one of the things I had to do was to manage the state microfinance institute. And it just occurred to me that the cost of banking and just the access of banking to a lot of people, it was a little bit prohibitive. So I felt, with the knowledge I had from sort of all my clients that sort of doing advisory work, and then the on-hand experience that I had while I was in government, I just really felt that there was a better way to serve people and to serve the majority of people. And funnily enough, around that same time I was thinking this, I started seeing quite a few sort of young, entrepreneurs that didn't necessarily have banking experience, talking about building a digital-only bank. And I really felt that this would be applicable in emerging market in Nigeria, which was where I was at the time. And that's really when I really started thinking about it and just conceptualizing it. And yeah, so there wasn't a one moment. It was a series of events, experiences, and just knowledge about what was happening in other parts of the world.
Absolutely, and obviously the market of Nigeria is about 100 million people without a bank account. So a small number.
Yeah, it's a bit of a number.
Personally, I'm a very big advocate of payment choice. I think a lot of the kind of movements to remove cash, I think that does cut a lot of people off. But at the same time, by having the biggest flaw with cash is there's no record of it, and then when you start to get a record, you then start to get a bit of you can start to build credit. What's the opportunity there? What's kind of the product offering of this digital bank in a nation where there's 100 million people using predominantly cash?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's in two folds. There are quite a lot of people with banks. I mean, with bank accounts. So we have about 50 million unique bank accounts, but there's still quite a lot of people without bank accounts. So we need to be able to cater for both, because even those guys with bank accounts are not necessarily fully banked. So there's still a lot of work to do to make banking more rewarding for them, which will entice them to be able to do more banking. So in Africa and in emerging market, a lot of things comes down to affordability and access. And it's very, very difficult to, with the old way of banking, to have branches absolutely everywhere on every street corner. It's just, just not financially viable. And then also that also is, brings us in, to the question of affordability. If we're spending so much money on sort of these physical infrastructures, we need to be able to fund them sustainably. Hence why typically traditional banking does cost money, because they have to run these operations. So what Kuda has been able to do is just remove this element and then make it accessible via phones and internet. And that way we're also able to remove the cost of the operations and transfer that cost savings back to the customer in the form of sort of free banking and and just a lot more affordable banking. So the opportunity is big. So we're tackling the two things: access and price. So, and we're starting to see, a lot of progress. We see even within our institution, a lot of people that didn't operate within the financial services actually opening bank accounts, as well as obviously the existing guys that have bank accounts. A lot of them switching to this kind of easy to use, no fee type banking. So the market is absolutely enormous.
Absolutely. I think your slogan's Bank of the Free.
Yes, we are, and we really mean that. We mean that in terms of obviously people gravitate towards it because of the price. We're a very price conscious continent. And that's very normal in an environment where the level of affluence is not as high as some other sort of countries or continents. Price is a factor, but we go beyond price, and it's just really about the freedom that it gives to you as as a customer, the freedom to completely understand what your money is doing. The freedom to be able to save money effortlessly. We have a credit product coming out in May. So just the freedom to have access to a little bit of extra money, for unplanned circumstances. Just really freedom just to not be trapped when it comes to money. And we have to appreciate the fact that money is a very, very important factor in the life that we live in today. So, it really goes beyond the price point. So it's freedom in all ramifications of the word freedom.
Speaking of kind of sayings, one of our spine quotes that we've had in the past is there's no shortage of good ideas. What there is a shortage of is the will to execute them. With that in mind, it seemed pretty academic for all digital bank in a market such as Nigeria. Why has this not been done before? I mean, if I was, Echo Bank or whoever out in Nigeria, I would think, oh, we should create a speedboat digital bank to try and do this. Why has nobody done this before?
Yeah, so look, there are so many factors. You have obviously, the mindset. There's the old way of doing something, and it has been successful from a commercial perspective. So it's kind of, why change it? So as a traditional bank, you literally have to disrupt yourself to see this opportunity, and it's there's a lot of risks involved in kind of just dismantling what has worked so well for centuries. So that's one factor. And then the people that sort of would tend to think along this line of innovation and not necessarily existing, bankers within the, what we understand as, the traditional way of banking. But you also have to understand the regulatory environment as well. So that also is another challenge. And then there's the technology part of it, which, technology is moving, it's evolving on a daily basis. So if you're bringing all of these things together, and there's also a trust factor, it's easier to trust something that you see physically, especially when it comes to money, at least I can walk into this branch and, I can hold somebody, So it's just so many things that need to come together and work, perfectly together and sync together for it to be successful. And obviously, there needs to be capital to do that. So it's not an easy task. It has been said, a lot of people have told me, and I've told myself that, one has to be crazy to do this, to venture into this kind of thing. So, but I think I'm crazy enough, and I've put a team together that also buy into that, craziness and belief that, this is definitely the new way to provide financial services to people.
With that in mind of your team, obviously we're in the middle of a lockdown, a pandemic at the moment. How has that kind of affected you and your team? What's the atmosphere like? Because from some banks that we've heard, it's almost kind of, it's been the digital disruptor and forced them to accelerate certain projects. What's it been like with you guys at Kuda?
Yeah, so if from an operational perspective, it feels like we were built for this. The biggest challenge for most people would be, I think, customer service. So if you don't have that in place already for customer service to be remote, it's very difficult to switch on, quickly. But from inception, we've always operated sort of a remote 24/7 customer service strategy, and it's a messaging service. So, it's literally just like talking to your friend. You need something done, you need something fixed, you can just send a message, and the important thing is you want that thing fixed. So we've been able to kind of master the art of doing that. And when the pandemic and the lockdown happened, it was very natural for us just to continue in terms of operations. Now, obviously, within a working environment, we definitely miss the camaraderie of, seeing each other. Every time we hit a landmark or a milestone or whatnot, just that whole, human connection, sometimes, is needed, especially in a challenging sort of environment that we're working within. But, look, we need to do what we need to do. We're coping. It's not ideal, but as far as the operations of Kuda goes, the customers, will know no difference whether we're working remotely or we're working from within the office. Everything is still pretty smooth as far as sort of the service to the customer goes.
Absolutely. Well, I want to look at the threats and the opportunities. Are there any concerns, or would it almost be beneficial if, let's say, a Monzo or a Revolut or even a Monese came to Nigeria? Because you're not at the moment. You're almost having to sell people on the concept of a bank account and to work with you, as opposed to come move your bank across to us. What's kind of the threat level, if you like?
Yeah. So look, I think banking is very much about relationships, and it's really very much about understanding people. So of course, an international, or foreign digital bank coming in, it would have an impact, and both, I think, for us from a competition perspective, positively, and potentially negatively as well. But we believe very strongly in our ability to understand the market that we're in. It's going to be a huge learning curve for anybody that doesn't understand that market and the psyche of the people in that market. But also, if you look at it, from another angle, what our desire is for this to be mainstream. So the more people play in the sector, the more believable it becomes, the more credible it becomes. So if you're the only one, it's just a lot more challenging to convince people that this is the right way. And if it's the right way, why are you the only one doing it? So if we have a couple of strong players and throw in a foreign company into the mix, I think it would go a long way in sort of convincing the mainstream that this is the way forward. So yeah, look, we're not afraid of competition. We embrace competition because we're trying to do something different. We're trying to revolutionize the way people see a bank. And if other people come in and help with that, I think that's a good thing. It increases our market, increases the people that we can sell to. So yeah, there are pros and cons, but I think more pros than cons.
Absolutely, I like that. I like that attitude. What's the end goal? What's the big moonshot? If you expand across West Africa, are you going to be offering mortgages? What's the big old moonshot?
Yeah, so look, it's a journey, and for now, we launched in about 7-8 months ago. So for now, it's very Nigeria focused, and to just perfect all the different features and roll out sort of retail product as well as a business banking in Nigeria. But ultimately, our vision is to build a bank for every African on the planet. That's our vision. So wherever you are, so long as you have an association with Africa, either you're sending money to Africa, if you live in Germany or wherever you are, you need to have a Kuda account. So it's a global bank for the African consumer. That's the long-term vision. And we're starting in the, arguably the most important and the largest economy in Africa. So it's a good base for us to start and build out that vision.
Our friends at Bank South Africa will fight you on that statement.
Yeah, well.
The other thing with that is obviously a lot of neobanks are startups. They're not businesses yet. They're still not sort of profitable, and they are relying a lot on VC funding, which is absolutely fine because I know there's some very big long-term goals. What's your kind of your roadmap in terms of business model, in terms of getting revenue in and becoming a profitable company that is, again, delivering the bank at the free?
Yeah, so look, there are different models, and when you look at digital banks, and depending on the region you're in, it's if anybody asks me, I think it's more suited to emerging market than sort of more developed markets, just because if you're removing fees, it becomes very difficult to monetize as a bank unless you start doing risky things like issuing credit and whatnot. But in emerging market, and we've seen it successfully in other parts, the biggest, I think, digital only bank outside of China is in Brazil, and they leverage on the sort of typically high interest within emerging market. So you can earn on low risk securities, low risk government securities, double digits interest. When you do issue credit, you can earn significant more credit. So it's really suited to an emerging market just because of also the ability to monetize on credit, the ability to monetize on things like bills and airtime purchases. So we make money. We already have revenues. So it's not just free banking blindly. So our goal is to be able to provide a service that is free to the consumer, and then for us to keep figuring out the best ways to utilize the consumers and the deposits that they keep with us to be able to monetize those. And the best way to do that is also by extending credit to people that need it immediately. And that's effectively what a bank actually is. You take money from somebody that doesn't need it immediately, and you extend it to somebody that needs it immediately, and you make a little spread on top called interest. And that's really the model that that we have here at Kuda.
Cool. So not dissimilar to the likes of Alipay in China. The knock-on effect is you then end up with this kind of huge marketplace with obviously you guys at the center of it as that kind of data hub at the center.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the name of the game is really just doing something that it works. It's very, as I said at the beginning, it's on paper, it makes sense. It's relatively easy, but to put it all together and to execute it and to earn the trust, and the technology doesn't break down all the time, and the regulators are on side, and if you're able to do all of that, there's a huge market. Africa is huge. That's why in China, in Asia they've done it well. It's just blown up. So we're really at the sort of at the tipping point of something that's potentially about to erupt. So it's exciting times for us, and we really believe we are the bank to do that, to change that, to kind of push this revolution forward. And look, it's not a thing of challenger banks or Kuda Bank taking on traditional banks. It's not. It's all about how do we make banking better, easier, cheaper, and that increases our whole market. So it's not just a Kuda thing. It's everybody playing in this field. We have say 200 million people in Nigeria, but only 50 million using bank accounts. What can we do that 50 million use bank accounts even more and use more services, and 150 million are also using bank accounts. So it increases the pot for everybody, and that's the way we look at it.
Absolutely. Well, I've got to ask as well. The name. What's the story behind the name?
Yeah.
And what were some of the prototypes as well, if there were any?
Yes. So so first thing, when we started thinking about this, we had a company called Kudi Capital, and Kudi in the Nigerian dialect, one of the Nigerian sort of dialects means money, and it's a universally accepted term to mean money in Nigeria or nationally, right? So we created a website called Kudi Money. That was just what we called it. It wasn't necessarily the name we wanted to use. It was just a holding name. But somehow we had these different experiments that we were doing, and people gravitated towards it, and it was Kudi Money. So we thought, okay, yeah, that's a cool name. We'll keep it. But again, around the same time, a lot of fintech companies started using very different variations of the Kudi term, which made sense. It means money. So we had a lot of different variations, and we really just wanted to stand out. But we had already done a lot of branding around the Kudi sort of name and whatnot. So we just thought, okay, look, let's make it simple. Let's change it a little bit. And, we tested, kudos, different things. But one of our designers, one of our UI designers, he's from Zimbabwe. And he just, one of the meetings, I said, hey, Kuda, what do you think of Kuda? I said, yeah, Kuda, I love it. It means love in my language. I said, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. What language is that? It said Shona. So, we researched it, it fit into our whole ethos of, just being empathetic. We love all our customers. And Kuda just made sense, at that point in time. So, and that's kind of like the way it came about. It means love in Shona. It's an African language, so it's still within sort of the realms of sort of the overall vision. And that's it. And we didn't have to make a lot of changes to the initial name we had.
Well, the last thing I want to ask, and I did ask this to Nora, so I'm curious to see whether it matches up. But will.i.am with Atom Bank. You've got Snoop Dogg with Klarna. Who's the the future face of Kuda Bank? What musician do you think best represents you guys?
I mean, so here's the thing, there is something cooking. So it would be difficult for me to say who, because then we would lose the element of surprise.
Yeah, of course.
But the Kuda persona is, definitely youthful. Somebody that is loved and loves people, and shows it in their actions. Talented. Actually has substance, something they do that, why people love them. And you have...
Sounds like you're describing myself.
Yeah, and you have to have a little bit of, a sprinkle of swag, a little cool, in you. So that's kind of, the persona. So if you can think of somebody like that, that's the Kuda personality.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, Babs, thank you so much. I know I'll reiterate it again because after I spoke to Nora, I did tweet it out. Predict you guys are going to have 500,000 customers by the end of the year and at least 2 million by the end of next year. So
we think so. Yeah.
You got to prove me wrong, but by a huge amount more.
Exactly. Yes. Excellent.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Babs.
Thanks so much, Ali.